Good evening, everyone. Sorry if everything's choppy here. My name is Dr. T.J. Rinaldi. I'm your district trainer. I'm going to be introducing Victor Frazier, who's with us. He's our assistant. You want to say hi to everybody, Vic?
Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining us this evening.
So what I'm going to do, since we have a smaller group, I'm going to go ahead and unmute you. You can choose to mute yourself, and I will be in the background answering questions, answering raised hands. Use the pins off to the right side to raise your hand or chat, and I can do that with you. If you hang tight with us for a moment, I'm going to hand the ring over to Victor. As we have a small group, you can go ahead and chime in however you see fit. Victor is going to take us through a tutorial, and there will be ample time for Q&A. So please hang tight.
All right. Good evening, everyone. Thank you again for joining us. Thank you again for thinking about being a facilitator at One Rotary Summit. I'm going to walk you through some ideas and some concepts today, and I'm going to show you some reference material that you might not be aware of that is afforded to us underneath the My Rotary page. So first, I am going to kind of walk you through what that looks like. So you should be able to see my screen, and then just underneath any search engine that you go to, you just go ahead and click on or enter in My Rotary, my.rotary.org, as you see in my search engine. Our lovely screen is going to show up. If you have not had the time or the opportunity to really dive into this My Rotary page, I strongly encourage you to do so. There is just a wealth of information for us out here. I'm going to show you where the information I'm getting for the presentation is this evening. So if you would like to go back and use it as reference or brush up before you start facilitating, please feel free to do so. Some of you might not be your club's trainer, so TJ and I apologize in advance if you can't get into this area of My Rotary, because the website is smart enough to know who has rights and privileges for all of the areas they need to have access to. So if you do not, please reach out to TJ, and he will go ahead and coordinate with your club president to make sure that you do have access. So I'm right here on myrotary.org. I'm going to go underneath the Learning Center, Learning and Reference tab. I'm going to go all the way over to the right, and I'm going to click on the Learning Center. Oop, I clicked one too many, I apologize. Learning and Reference, Learning Center is going to pop up. And you will see that once you've signed in, it has your role already listed here. So I'm going to go ahead and click on or expand. It's a little bit hidden, so if you click on that, you should be able to expand your roles. And then if you go all the way down to the bottom, there is the trainer. So that is where I am going to go ahead, and there is the trainer's toolkit. You will see my cursor hovering over that, and you will see that you can go ahead and get started just by simply clicking the start. You can see that I have already been through this. The one that I'm going to be going through this evening is going to be the trainer's toolkit here. This is for adult learners. This is the topic of this evening. There is another module that has a quiz associated, which if you're somebody who maybe has trained in the past, or maybe you were an educator in a previous life, but you haven't touched that area of your life in a little while, I highly recommend that you do the first one. But for this evening's purposes, I'm going to really concentrate on Module 2. So you just go ahead and click Module 2. It's going to pop up. And here is our trainer's toolkit. The first module that I told you about does have audio with it. This module does not. So I will be going ahead and facilitating us through this presentation this evening. You go ahead and click Start. It's a very simple PowerPoint. If those of you that are in the corporate world, you probably have something very similar to this in your training toolbox already. If not, it's very, very intuitive. There are keys down here on the bottom. You can fast forward. This tells you your progress line. If there was audio, you can use the audio controls here. And then always, if you need to continue, you can click here as well. If you're somebody like myself that you're done with the slide and you get kind of impatient, you get a little click happy, I will warn you right now, just be a little patient with the system. Again, this is an international website, so there could be a lot of people using the site at any one given time. So just have some patience with the site and you'll be just fine. So the course that we're going to go over this evening is going to understand how adults learn. As adults, we do learn a little bit differently than maybe your kids or grandkids. Know some techniques for facilitating learning. I have an opportunity in my role at Educators Credit Union to do a lot of seminars and workshops for a wide spectrum of audiences. So I'm going to give you some tips that I've learned over the years that are going to help you get through your first facilitation right okay. So adult learning theory, we're going to start off on the basics just to make sure that we're all on the same page and we all understand what that looks like. One of the things that is always different for adult learners is they prefer to learn information that is interesting. We all are in Rotary for a reason, service above self, so we want to learn more about the world around us and how we can impact it in a meaningful way. We want to know stuff that is applicable to our real life. Again, we're adults. We don't have time in our busy lives for absorbing information that we can't really use. So again, things that make sense for our lives. And it's also relevant to their past and future experiences. One of the things that is great about Rotary is that it allows you to bring all of your expertise to the table. So you can rely on your past experiences and then your future experiences as well. And I'm guessing that some of you are here because one of your future experiences is hopefully to be a facilitator at our One Rotary Summit. So characteristics of adult learners, and as you see, the system is very intuitive. It tells you exactly what's going on at any given time. So realistic, we just go ahead and click on that. And I'm not one of those trainers that is going to read verbatim. I'm going to kind of paraphrase. You are all adults, so hopefully you can read what's on your screen. But realistic, kind of the gist of this one is, and they're motivated to learn. They're there for a reason. I think back to my days in sitting in 9th grade, now that we're back in school season, and learning, you know, geometry. It's like, oh man, I don't want to learn this. How is this ever going to be important in my life? But adult learners are realistic. They're motivated to learn, and they're there to want to get some information to help them out in their real lives. So they're realistic. Another characteristic of adult learners is they're practical. They won't just sit there and nod, hopefully, and say agreeably that they've learned everything. They want to actually have some practice with hands-on. You are going to be I'm giving you some ideas later on, some activities that you can use. Allow the participants to apply their learning. Adult learners really like to show you what they know or what they have learned in your session. So that's a great asset to adult learners. Another thing adult learners is experienced. They have a lot of knowledge coming to the table, and a lot of our Rotarians have really exciting and engaging professional lives. So go ahead and use that experience to your advantage when you're facilitating. This one here, unfortunately, can be kind of one of those double-edged swords. We can have, for those of you that have ever facilitated in the room, You can have somebody that might want to try to dominate the conversation or take over your presentation, and they'll give you some ideas later on in the presentation of how to kind of handle those individual situations. Excuse me. Everybody is unique. Everybody is walking a different path in life. So again, use that diversity to your advantage. One of the things that is great about Rotary is that we're a very diverse group of individuals. Don't try to make your presentations monochromatic so they're just cookie cutter. Really try to bring in those people that have unique experiences. So it's really a good way for you to expand and make your presentation that much more engaging for the participants. Busy. All of us are very, very, very busy individuals. I can willing to bet that if we took an opportunity right now to share all of our screens and pull up all of our Outlook calendars or whatever calendar you're using, it'd be pretty much an event every day. So with that being said, adults really like clear outlines, and they really appreciate you sticking on time and you sticking to the task at hand. That's not to say that you can't have a little flexibility and a little bit of discussion built in. We don't want somebody that, if there's a really good conversation going, to cut somebody off just for the sake of taking a 15-minute break if that's when the scheduled break is. So just make sure you're cognitive of your time, and there's going to be some cues that you'll get from your audience that we're going to go into a little bit later on that'll kind of tell you if you're losing them, if you're not feeling as if you're letting them elaborate on their uniqueness, and they'll let you know if they're not thinking that you view them as an expertise or an expert in their subject matter. They'll kind of let you know if the information you're giving is not practical, and then always as adults they'll let you know, like, hey, you know, that's not really realistic for our club. And hopefully after tonight's session you will have some ideas on how to engage all of those characteristics of an adult learner. So as you see, we clicked on all of our little bubbles there, so we can go ahead and click continue. So one of the things that comes with adult learners is we're kind of set in our ways. We're all creatures of habit as being humans. So there are really different learning styles. So the one that I'm going to talk about first is going to be they like to diagram an issue or to analyze it. So that is somebody that is going to be your visual learner. And we'll give you some ideas of how to engage the visual learner a little bit later on in the presentation. There's also number 2 here. And again, I told you earlier I'm a little click happy, so sometimes I have to pause myself and wait for the system to come up. But I do remember one of these didn't work when I practiced my session earlier this week. So obviously the I absorb and retain most of what I hear is going to be your audio learner. And I apologize, that bubble is not coming up at this particular time. Let's see if I can get it. And while we're waiting for that to pop up, now would be a good time for me to kind of go over our side menu bar over here. You all can raise your hands. You can message myself or TJ directly. So I apologize if this particular click through. Oh, there we go. I knew it would just take a second, and this was the one slide that I knew has an error on it. So I apologize if the absorb doesn't work. But as to reiterate, here, just like you said, is going to be an audio learner. And then the last one, I like to work through real-life problems. You're a tactile learner. You have to touch it, feel it. These are the people maybe in younger days loved Rubik's Cubes. They had to feel the puzzle, or this might be somebody that is a puzzle person or maybe a crafter. So these are just kind of common learning styles. This isn't to say that if I am a visual learner, then that's the only way that I'll learn. I'm more of a visual and a tactile learner. I like to see things and then I like to be able to do them myself, hands-on. I particularly love YouTube. For those of you that have not had an opportunity, I highly encourage you just to go out to YouTube and Google or YouTube just about anything, and you'll be able to get a little tutorial on that. And that is a great example of all three learning styles buttoned up into one. And we're kind of going through all of that today. The one that we're kind of missing is tactile this evening because you're not clicking through anything at this particular moment. But you can definitely appreciate the three different learning styles. Most of us prefer to learn visually, and if you remember back, or if you have kids or grandkids, if you show them how to do something, they can mimic you very well. So I think as humans, we're hardwired to learn visually first. But they tend to learn, as I said earlier, like myself, through a combination of different teaching methods. One of the things that I really want to make sure is that when you're facilitating, is that you're trying to incorporate or sprinkle in all three of these different types of learning styles. And we're going to go through some of those techniques a little bit later on. And as I said, I am click happy, so I'll just wait for that to pop up. So again, I am not going to read each one of these for you, but again, the visual learners are the ones that use their eyes the most, using diagrams, videos, outline a concept. These will be your people that when you are giving a presentation, they're the first ones to open up their notebook or the agenda or flip to the back and go all the way through the materials before you even present it, because they visually want to see what's coming before the actual event gets started. They will take detailed notes to reinforce the information again, so they can go back and look and see what they have actually learned the evening that you have been facilitating. And again, I apologize, there's a lot of people, looks like, on the site tonight, so it's going to take just a second for the tactile to pop up. There we go. Learn by doing approach. They prefer instructions that uses activity, handouts, and exercises. So these will be the individuals that you will see if you are just doing a PowerPoint for a half hour, 45 minutes. They're going to be the ones that start getting a little fidgety, start maybe making things out of their paper in front of them. They might even go so far as start to doodle. Again, because they need their hands to be doing something for the learning process. So again, there are different ways that you can engage them as well. Then we have our audio learners. They are the ones that are great at telling stories about their experiences, how they ran their membership campaign, how, oh, I remember when Sam was the secretary and this is what happened. You know, that is a great example of an audio learner. They learn by listening, and then one of the things that they really enjoy is they really enjoy telling their own story and get people engaged in their story as well. So those are, again, just a little bit further elaboration on our common learning styles. And then here are kind of broken down into areas and different methods that you can use in your presentation to really engage all three types. And as you see, you can really, I can really see or envision you using all of these different tactics in your presentation. There is visual, is, you know, audio, graphics, flip charts, demonstrations are really good. Have some type of team building activity, maybe as an icebreaker for your tactile learners. A little bit of role playing. Maybe you could have somebody in the group, if you're giving them a group assignment, the person that's usually the tactile learner is always the one that raises their hands and says, oh, I want to take notes, or I'll write on the flip chart for everybody. They really enjoy workshops, things again that are hands-on. Our auditory learners, here are the 4 categories for them. Again, storytelling, examples, brainstorming, and discussions are the best methods for them. As you're going to see throughout the evening, we don't want you to get pigeonholed into visual, tactile, or an auditory presentation. Really try to stretch yourself and come up with different methods for every part of your presentation. That really works best to make sure that you're engaging. Again, because one of the previous slides that we said is that we're a very diverse group and we're all very unique. So we like to be taught how we like to learn. So make sure that your presentation has, I would say, at least one from each one of these categories in there. If you are having a problem or a struggle, you're like, you know what, Victor, I am strictly a visual learner. I would have no idea how to even get a brainstorming session going. You know, reach out to TJ or myself. We can certainly give you some direction and some examples that will help you out in that respect. So here are, again, some more examples for you. Option 1, visual. You know, show a video on vocational training teams that teach you how to design a sustainable water project. Or if you've had a Rotarian that went out and filmed something about a project that they did, have them give you that footage and you can show it in your presentation. For the tactiles, have them review the project from each area and focus in on small groups. For auditory, have participants discuss their personal foundation experiences or just maybe tell their personal story about why they decided to become part of the Rotary family. Again, I'm just giving you some options. For our tactile learners, you're probably feverishly taking notes. Our audio, we don't have to worry about. Our visuals are probably right now trying to remember exactly where I showed you how to get to this site. Again, we're here for you as a reference. If you forget any of that information, we'll certainly help you out. Visual, right? Participant ideas. We're building community awareness on a flip chart. If anybody has been to a strategic planning session in the last 5-10 years, those amazing 3M stick around the room flip charts are wildly popular. And you can see that those kind of get everybody involved. That flip chart, you can have somebody come up that is the tactile learner, and then the visual learner can see them coming up, and then the audio learner can tell their story. So you can incorporate everybody in those flip charts. One of the things that you can also do is assign somebody in one of the small groups to be the note taker. You know, they might just really enjoy doing that. Telling the stories about foundation impact. If you have a great story to tell about your Rotary, use that experience. One of my favorite stories from Racine Founders Rotary is our post-prom. It's just one of the best stories that I love to tell about our Rotary group and the great work that we do. Again, these are all just options, giving you different options how you can accomplish all 3 of these in one kind of setting. You know, go out and get some statistics from your club president. You know, hey, how many of our Rotarians have presented or had speaker duty? Get some charts. You know, you can use that as well. You can do a little bit of role playing. We all know that it's always a little difficult sometimes to ask for money or donations. There's some people in your foundation or in your Rotary that might be great people that do this. So again, the role playing would be great for tactile learners. And the audio ones, again, brainstorming different ideas for foundation activities. So as you see, there are 3 different options out there. There's a ton of different ways to incorporate this, into different your different presentation. One of the things that I really love about the My Rotary site and this learning adventure that we're on together this evening is it gives you a little bit of a testing knowledge. So we're going to do our first test here, and I am one of those facilitators that I do like to call people out. So we have, looks like, I'm just going to go right down the list. There'll be an opportunity for everybody to participate. So Bob Young, can you hear me okay?
Bob, you there? Oh, he's asking a question. I've unmuted him. He says yes.
All right. Bob, can you tell me where the auditory learning style should go? Role-playing, review a grant example, or discuss tips for effective project partnerships? Where should I move this in? TJ, I'll let you tell me where he's saying to move it to.
Role-playing.
Say again, please. Audio, he says.
Yes, the audio, where should I place that at? This one, 1, 2, or 3 for this circle here?
No.
One, he says.
Alrighty, next up, Krista Williams?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Where should I put tactile learning style?
I actually would flip them, and I would probably put auditory on number 3 and role-playing for tactile.
Very good. There we go. Ooh. There we go. And Harry, you are our last contestant. Do I need to tell you where this one goes, Harry?
Oh, I think it goes
Right here for me? Alrighty, we're going to go ahead and submit. All right, good job. Thank you for participating, Bob. I can see where you might have chosen that path, but this is the correct path and the correct alignment. So thank you guys all for participating. Don't worry, Tammy, you're coming up next. There's going to be another one for you. So your first session of training day includes a group activity, which you should explain. The audience, after participants break into groups, you notice that many of them confused about how to proceed. Maybe they're kind of looking around, they're kind of talking to each other, nobody is actually doing anything. So there's some telltale signs of what has happened. And here is what you can do to kind of get things moving. Write the instructions on a whiteboard or flip chart as a visual aid, just so those visual learners, maybe they were busy catching up with their friend from an old club and they didn't quite hear the directions, so they need the visual cue. And then also you can always review those instructions a couple times out loud to make sure that everybody is on board. So what can you click this? And again, I apologize. I'm going to break my click happy habit one of these days soon. So what can you change in the future to make the instructions more effective? Provide visual clues. Assigning, using a slide, you could have the slide up on the screen for the thing. You can have it on the flip chart. You can have it in your handouts. One of the things that is really good for the tactile learner is maybe have that person come up and give the instructions again. Sometimes it just takes a different voice for your audience to interact with. So in summary, we're about at the halfway mark here. Adult learners relate to training that is interesting and applicable. Again, I think we're all adult enough to know that we've all been in that training session. We're like, why did I just go to that? And then when somebody asks you about that training session like a month or two later that was in the room with you, you can't really recall any of it because it wasn't interesting. And maybe it wasn't, maybe you were just in the wrong meeting. Or I've heard this one a couple times from workshops that I've been to. Oh, my boss told me to come to this one. Well, that's not an interesting or applicable learner at that point. And so I'm going to give you some tips a little bit later on. But one of the blessed parts about being in the Rotary is that we all are subscribing to service above self, so we all want to be there. Adults have an insight and experience that assists them in the learning process. You don't have blank canvases as you do with children. They already have some set mores and some set ways that they would like to learn, and it's your job of being a facilitator to kind of see what those are and play to those people's strengths. And that is going to get you to be from a good facilitator to a great facilitator. And we already touched on the different learning styles, so I'm not going to spend too much time on that slide at all. Facilitation in adult learning, or again, what is facilitation? So again, we're all on the same page as to what this is. Facilitation guides the participant through the learning process. You are there. You can think of facilitation as being the coach. You're the one that is there to walk them through to make sure that they understand the skills that you are hoping to impart upon them and to assist them in mastering those skills. Discussing experiences related to the subject area. Again, this is again for our audio learners. Giving examples of what works. I don't know if any of you ever had this experience where you got like a really great recipe from a friend or a family member and you went home and you tried it and it just didn't work and you're kind of scratching your head like, well, what happened? What did I do wrong? And you go back and talk to your friend that gave you a recipe and they're like, oh, yeah, you got to do this one extra step. And you're like, oh. Well, in that example, they gave you a bad example of what didn't work. They didn't give you all the information. So again, as a facilitator or a coach, it's really your job to make sure that they have all of the tools and all of the information that they need to be successful in the skill that you're teaching them. Allow the participants to apply learning through practice. We all remember learning to ride a bike. We didn't get it our first day. We had our training wheels on, maybe for a week, maybe for 2 weeks. I see some kids in my neighborhood now that the poor training wheels are rubbed down just to the nub, but the kid still thinks he needs those training wheels. It's just a confidence thing. Until he practices enough and gets to the point where he feels confident to take those off, that's when he has mastered the skill. So again, allowing people to have those training wheels on for a little bit is really where the practice comes in your learning or your facilitation process. How you help them is be actively involved in the learning. Give examples, try to draw them in, tell stories, set the stage, interact and learn from one another. Really try to engage everybody that's in the room at least once throughout the presentation. I know that might be really challenging if you have 40 or 50 or 60 people in the room. But if you're in a smaller group, some of the learning sessions that I had an opportunity to attend in person, there's been about 15 or 20 people in the room. You can certainly try to at least say hi to or make eye contact or engage just about everybody in the room. Look at analyzing and applying their learning. One of the things that I really like to say is, okay, now show me. Go into your separate groups and show me how you would example of this particular problem, or show me how you would run this membership campaign in this particular area. And simulate real-world experiences. This is one of the things that when I do my job as a financial educator for high school students, I love to tell the story about the immense amount of debt that I got into my early years in college, hopefully so they can learn a little something from my experience. One of the things that I did want to kind of warn you on is in this interact and learn from others. Be cautious on this one. As I alluded to earlier, sometimes there are going to be people in the room that will like to take over your presentation. Just really be mindful of those individuals. Let them kind of have their say, but make sure you rein them in a little bit and keep them on task. Some people will have a tendency to tangent a little bit and go off topic, which I think can be a good diversion, especially if you're in a long training session. But if it keeps cropping up a little bit, really try to curtail that, because it would really, you're just doing a disservice to the other people that are in the room trying to learn from you. And always remember that you are the facilitator, you're the head of the class, you're the coach, you're the teacher, and it's going to be your show. So one of the things that I really can embark upon you enough is being prepared and being knowledgeable. Be ready for those screwball questions that are going to come up. Be ready to answer them. Be comfortable in your knowledge and be comfortable in your way of commanding the classroom. Creating a safe and non-judgmental environment. Try not to wear, I'm sorry, where's a wrong thought there, but you don't want to smack somebody down if they maybe have an idea that you don't think is the best idea. You don't want to come down on them too hard, just maybe because you don't have the insight that they do about their club. They might have had the best idea the whole year, and then when you hear it, you're like, man, that would never work for my club. Well, that's your club, so that would be a spot where you really don't want to be judgmental towards them. Here's just kind of basic 101. Remain neutral on controversial issues. I remember my mom always saying, you never ever talk about politics, sex, or religion at the dinner table. And that's kind of one of the things that I would embark upon you for your facilitation as well. Just, keep it neutral and on controversial topics. Use questions to guide the discussion. And as you see, there are going to be different areas where you can click on here and find this information that I just gave you as well if you want to come back into it. Know that they can voice their opinions without being criticized. A lively discussion is how we all grow. If we all had the same opinions about everything, we'd all be driving around in Ford Tauruses, right? And we're not there, so we all have different opinions. Encourage that discussion, but just always remember, you as a facilitator is your role to guide those discussions. Okay. Always probe for more information to clarify and advance the discussion. One of the things that I'm still learning as an assistant district trainer is we as Rotarians, we love our acronyms. PETS, all that stuff that I'm still learning, and I'm bringing myself up to speed on that. But using questions to make sure that people have a command of the knowledge is good. Projecting a positive image. I remember one of my most exciting classes was macroeconomics at UW Oshkosh, and we walked in, and I swear the professor was actually asleep when the whole class came in, and we were like, oh my goodness. But again, it was just setting that tone and projecting a positive image. He had wonderful things to say, but my first thought was this is going to be the most boring class on the planet. So it's your job to project that positive image. Set the tone for a dynamic session by projecting positive energy and professionalism. Manage time well. One of the things, if you're watching me on the webcam, that you'll notice that I do from time to time is you'll see me looking down to the lower right. I'm always keeping an eye on the clock. One of the things that I strongly suggest that you do is at least do a dry run through your presentation at least once or twice so you can look at managing your time. And here is where I kind of alluded to in the slide earlier is maximize your participation. If you're in a small group, really try to pull out or at least get some interaction from everybody. Even if it's as simple as, hey, do you agree with what Bob just said? And if they say, yeah, that tests for engagement, and it also allows that person to interact with the rest of the group. So I'm not saying you have to get a 20-minute discussion out of every participant, but all of the workshops and seminars that I've been to in my lifetime, I really enjoyed the one where the facilitator was positive, managed their time well, and encouraged participation amongst the participants. Here's one thing that, as you can probably guess by my impatient clicking, I am the youngest of 8 kids, so I learned to speak really fast. One of the things that I constantly have to do is try to slow down when I'm speaking. So make sure that you're keeping an idea of how quick that you're speaking. Don't interrupt a speaker. If somebody has an idea or is trying to get a thought out, let them finish that thought. The only time that I would say that this is appropriate to interrupt a speaker is when it might be that person that is going off on a tangent that is nowhere near the topic you're on, or if they're trying to monopolize the floor for too much, then it's appropriate as a facilitator. But if somebody is just trying to finish a thought, just have that polite pause and wait for them to get it all out. Try to avoid making jokes because you really don't know your audience's comedy level. I am constantly guilty of this. I am in high schools a lot, and I always think that I'm a little bit younger than I actually am, as I think we all do. And I always make jokes or references to music that these kids nowadays have no clue about. So I have tried to avoid making jokes. I kind of alluded to this one a little earlier. Don't respond immediately. Take a pause and think about the question and let it digest in your head for a second, and then before your response. One of the things that you should really avoid is slang or colloquial terms. One of the things that we always do is kind of fall back on our individual language. Here in the Midwest, especially down here in southeast Wisconsin, we say bubbler a lot, which for some of you that's a drinking fountain or a water fountain. So just kind of be as generic and as plain spoken as possible, and try not to put those terms in there, because you're just going to probably end up confusing some of your participants. Again, some of your participants might not be from the region you're from, so if you're telling a joke about Billy Bob's old sugar shack and everybody in the room's laughing but one person, that's probably a good idea that they didn't get the joke. Rephrase if you're not understood. This is really one of those signs of a great facilitator. If they can take one concept and explain it in 3 different ways. And one of the things that was great for me coming up in finances is that we all speak about money differently. I remember one time an individual came in to the credit union, and the individual said, "I want you to take this money and put it up into my checking account." And I was like, "Put it up into your checking account? Like, how is that even possible? I'll put it into my drawer and I can make the deposit." And they said, "No, you." And I said, "Do you mean you want me to deposit it into your checking account?" "Oh, yes, that's what I meant." So again, rephrasing or reiterating back to make sure that you understood, or if you're not understood, find a new way of saying it, or use a couple different words to describe the topic you're trying to get across. So one of the things that you can also do is ask questions to manage the pace and tone of your discussion. We're going to look at what an open question is. An example would be, can anyone offer a strategy for finding new members? That's very open. There are a million different ways of finding new members. And how did you handle this issue in your district? It really is open to a wide variety of creative answers. So my mind works like this with these 2 types of questions. If there's more than one answer to the question, for me it's an open question. And then on the other side, you're going to have closed questions. If there's only usually one finite answer with that question, then that is a closed question. And right there was a perfect example of where I could have inserted a joke, but I'm not going to, because that is inappropriate at this time. So who is in charge of planning your club meetings? That's one person. You know, it might be 2 people, but that's a finite group of people. What is the name of Rotary founder and the first president? That was one person. We know who that is. You know, so those are closed questions. So again, asking these 2 types of questions can really pace your discussion and the tone of your discussion as well. So again, one of the things that I love to do, and this is something that really, if you wear a Fitbit, you will be amazed at how many steps you can get in one facilitation session. Keep moving around the room. Don't just sit behind the podium and look at the PowerPoint screen. That is vastly boring for everybody involved. So make sure also not to turn your back to the participants. In some cultures, that can be a huge sign of disrespect. Tone. Speak loud and clearly. Change your volume and tone of your voice to stimulate interest. And also try to watch with that. I was in one session where the presenter always did this example here. The individual would end their questions with a question, and their voice would go up all the time. So you understand I'm saying, right? Is that the best thing you've ever heard, right? And after about 5 minutes, it got really old. So just make sure you're under cognitive of your volume and your tone of voice. It really can stimulate interest. If you have an engaging voice and you kind of change your timbre, change your tone, moving around the room, it really, really makes for a better presentation for all that are involved. I talked about this one, use eye contact. Listen to what they're saying and you care about what they're saying. If you ask them a open-end question and then you start walking up to the front of the room and turn your back to the person that's answering the question, I'd be a little ticked off if I was the participant, like, well, they didn't even care what I'm saying. They're just going to walk away as I'm answering. And the flip side of that is maybe you're trying to get quickly to the flip chart to write down their great idea. Then, just look them in the eye and say, excuse me, I want to get up to the flip chart and write that great idea down. Then again, it shows that you're engaged and that you are caring about what they're saying. Gestures, this is one thing that I had to train myself not to do as much. Just be cautious of what you're using as your gestures. I know some of us like to talk with our hands. If you're that person, I've seen some presenters where literally they have to put their hands in their pockets. Or another trick that you can use is holding on to a pen or a pencil, or maybe even the clicker if you're using a PowerPoint presentation. You tend not to move your hands around a lot if there's something in them. And here, silence is not golden when you're a facilitator. Silence tells you a couple different things. I like how they have it phrased here, consider silence a member of the audience. It allows reflection and can signal transition during a discussion. But if you're up and you're in your presentation and you have not heard from somebody, or somebody has not interacted with you, or you have not asked an open or a closed-end question in 45 minutes, that is too long of a time to go without engaging your audience. One, you'll start to lose people. You might really have the audio people, but your visual and your tactile people have probably tuned out and have already started checking their emails on their smartphones. Alrighty, there's some interesting faces that we have there. Watch for those nonverbal clues. You will see the person that is looking like the young lady here. They just seem uncomfortable. Maybe there's an icebreaker. Maybe this is their first time they've ever been to a One Rotary Summit or something as large as this. So maybe try to put them at ease. Don't force these individuals to participate. Maybe try to draw them in slowly through the course of your presentation. Appear to be opposed to the ideas being discussed. When they ask for their thoughts on the subject, it's always nice to acknowledge them and say, well, I can certainly understand where that would work in your club, and thank you for bringing that to our attention. We'd like to hear some other ideas now. You see how I acknowledge them, I validated their point of view, and I transitioned into somebody else's viewpoint. So again, that is a really good way of letting this person be heard, but not let them take over your presentation. If somebody appeared uninterested, help them relate to the training. Start with a story, or use an interactive activity to connect participants with the subject. This is something that can be very challenging in our busy day and age. And I'll leave it up to you as facilitators. For me, I'm really lucky in some of the schools that I go and present in. Depending on the school and their cell phone policy, I've had some teachers have a cell phone bucket where they have to put the cell phones in a bucket. Now, I don't want you going back to your presidents and saying, hey, the assistant district trainer said we should collect all cell phones during this. No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying be cognitive of the participants that are uninterested, because if they're checking their cell phone It could be a legitimate reason. They might have a sick child at home. Maybe they're waiting for a big deal to close, or maybe they just are the only person that can answer a question from one of their fellow teammates. But if it's a consistent issue, you can certainly be professional and address that at the break. If they seem confused by your assignment, give examples or demonstrate the action you want them to make. Again, so the last thing that you want as a facilitator is somebody to walk away and say, you know what, I didn't get anything from that at all. And hopefully by now you've been getting some ideas as to how that would make a good presentation for you. So I don't like to lie to you, so Tammy, you are up next. What are Rotary's areas of focus? Is that an open or closed question?
I would see that as an open question.
Okay.
And perhaps that's because I know way too much.
Okay, fair enough. And then we're going to start back at the top of our tree. Well, actually, I'm going to throw a curveball in here. Let's see if TJ is going to take the next one. Can anyone tell us how you found a community partner? Is that an open or closed, TJ?
I would say that that's a closed.
Okay. All right, now we'll come back to our friend Bob. Bob, where are we at with what will be your biggest challenge next year? Is that an open or a closed one?
Open, he says.
Open, good deal. And then our last one on here is going to be Krista again. What's that last one? Is that a closed one, do you think?
I think that's closed.
That's closed. All right, let's see how we did, everybody. Oh, try again. All right. So I was going to see what are Rotary's areas of focus. I'm going to disagree, and that one is going to be closed because we have certain areas we can't solve all the problems of the world, so that one's going to be a closed area. Can anyone tell us how you found a community partner? That one I would say is going to be more of an open one. It's going to be closed. Closed is going to be who collects your fees, because that's going to be one person. And what will be your biggest challenge next year? I think that is definitely going to be open. And there we go. So you see, again, as we all had different experiences and unique backgrounds, we had different ideas as to what these questions were. So thank you guys for participating in that one. And we're going to continue on. So this is how to manage opposition. I've kind of been giving you some tips as we've been going through the evening. But you're facilitating a discussion on recruiting new members. Participants offered a number of innovative ideas that have been well received by the group. One challenging participant voiced concerns about the suggestions. You notice that other participants, energy levels drops, and she goes into detail about why the strategy won't work. So again, here are some ideas. As I said, identify each concern and have others suggest ways to overcome it. Ask the participant an open question about what she would recommend, and then take the opportunity to change the discussion to overcoming obstacles when implementing new ideas. So again, remember the situation is this person is kind of sucked the energy out of the room and is really not allowing the discussion to move forward. So your role as a facilitator is to step in and really maybe explore some of the ideas and maybe make that person understand that, well, you might think that that's a bad idea, but this might be a good idea for other clubs. So again, the no bad ideas concept. All right, here's some other scenarios we have up here. And how to plan a service project. As the group begins to discuss the best practices for carrying out a service project, you notice one participant who is restless. He is sitting with his arms crossed, is talking loudly to a person nearby, and begins to make comments that are unrelated to the session. So one of these ones, if you were like me in school, I always noticed that the teacher was always hovering around me for some reason, because I guess you could probably tell by now I'm a little bit of a chatty Cathy. So just move closer to that person and say, did you need a break? And if they say, oh no, and say, okay, you know, ask him to comment about the idea that has been suggested. Again, engaging. Hey, were you paying attention up here? You don't want to call them out or embarrass them. It's not high school or third grade, but again, they're there for a reason. They're an adult learner. And you want to make sure that that person isn't interrupting the other people around the table. Make eye contact with the participant. Sometimes that's all it takes. And if you also notice others are restless, it might be time to either take a break or change the topic. Taking your training from good to great. Here's some numbers. 57% of participants indicate that they did not feel prepared for their roles after attending the training. So you can look at analyzing your results. This is definitely something that we like to look at. I know that when we do training sessions, we always like to get an idea of how we did. So again, these are some things that you can use to make sure that everybody is okay. So that first one was, as I said, they weren't prepared. Well, assign pre or post training work to make sure participants have the additional knowledge they need. Add a variety of activities to make sure that participants with different learning styles can learn successfully. We talked about that one already. Prioritize the most important topics and adjust the length of the session to cover those topics thoroughly. You've had a full morning of training right after lunch, and you just started a long session. You notice that many of the participants seem uninterested in the topic. One of the things that I really would encourage you to do is, at your tables, have some type of sugar. I don't care what age you are, sugar works. Have candy bars, have gum, have lifesavers, something along those lines, so that if somebody is feeling restless or just maybe needs to get up and take a break. Just, is it too warm in there? We all have raised body temperatures after we've been eating. Try to interactivity to get people moving, talking or drawing, or get them up, moving around. Take a stretch. Acknowledge the situation and attention, emphasize the importance of the topic. What that means is like, hey, I know this is not the most exciting topic, everybody, but we're going to get through it together. We're going to maybe schedule in some breaks. One of the worst things you can do is right after lunch, schedule like an hour-and-a-half session. That is going to be torturous for you as a facilitator, and then also for your participants as well. So in summary, in the last couple minutes that we have with each other, facilitation, coaching, or mentoring allows learners to participate actively in training through discussion. Use a variety of open and closing questions to support interactive learning. Effective facilitators use nonverbal communications to manage the learning environment. Participate in new facilitating technique before your next training event. Try something new that you haven't done before. Maybe come up with a new icebreaker. Plan activities that accommodate various learning styles. This evening I've given you all examples of how you can do that. Prepare a list of open questions for your next event. And share something that you learned on social media. So again, those are the action steps that you can use to become a good to great facilitator. So that is the end of the actual course. I did want to show you a couple other things. There are some trainer tools here for you as well. If again you don't have access, I'll reiterate. Please let us know, and we can look at getting you those materials. So again, there is a ton of information out here on the My Rotary. So in the last minute that we have left with each other, does anybody have any questions for me at this point?
Hey, Victor, I just want to, before we sit here, I just want to mention that pull over the screen over to my side for a moment and go over the facilitators application. If everybody out this facilitators application, so that we could, let's come over here.
Can I take
find a way?
You're really choppy still, TJ. So what TJ was going into is this facilitators application underneath your handouts. So there is the application, I think. It should pop up in a second. for you to go ahead and download. If you want to add anything, TJ, it's just really difficult for us to hear you on this end. At least it is for me.
Okay, sorry about that. Let's fill this out and get it to us.
Okay, so there is the Facilitators Committee. Name, phone number, email, club, years in Rotary, offices held, appointments held in district or zone. And we're looking through September 7th or the 13th for the webinar for you all, and that's what we went through this evening. And then there is the areas of expertise is listed on the second page, and if you can get that back to TJ, that would definitely help us out.
Thank you all for attending. We're not going to be throwing anybody to the wolves. We will be connecting with each of you to find out your level of interest. And the biggest tasks we have coming up are the One Rotary Summits. If you read your district newsletter that just came out, you'll be able to see when those are scheduled for. Victor, do you have anything else?
No, I am all good. Thank you all so much, and thank you for participating in the discussion this evening, and I look forward to seeing some of you at One Rotary Summit.
Thank you, Victor.
You're welcome.
Thank you all.
You're welcome.